Out of all the video game eras, the DS era and early Wii era is easily the most nostalgic for me. And when the DS came out, I really didn't get it at first. I remember a friend of mine after Christmas came over unannounced, rang my doorbell, I need to show you something. And he brought the DS. And me, being a big fan of the Game Boy Advance, honestly, I didn't get it. I didn't get the appeal of the two screens. For me, it was just, a more clunky Game Boy Advance. And we played Mario Kart on it, and it was fine, but it didn't feel compelled to get my own Nintendo DS back then. After that, when I went to a new school for the 7th grade, I met new people, and one friend of mine, he had a DS and he talked about the gaming experiences he had on this and why he likes it. And I was more interested in a few of the games we will see here, which I didn't get on the Game Boy Advance. And this step into a new generation, a new era of gaming, is what sold me on the Nintendo DS. And let's talk about the DS, the original model here. I think this is my favorite piece of gaming hardware design ever produced. At least when it's shut like this, like the slightly curved design just feels nice in the hand. It's a bit plasticky, but it's just beautiful. Now, when you flip it open, okay, it has this like bottom heavy design, which honestly I quite like. The buttons, the D-pad, they're not the greatest. The screens are very small. So there's definitely room for improvement. But when it's shut close like this, I mean, this is one of my favorite video game console system designs of all time. Of course, a friend of mine broke the hinge at one point, so mine looks just like all the others. I always took care of my handheld systems, never borrowed to a friend, they will destroy it. So, because I've been going through my collection and thinking about my favorite games for the Nintendo DS, I thought let's put a top 10 list together and I'll show it to you. And while I was planning this, a person in my comments section actually requested my favorite 3DS games as well. So after this one, we'll jump into the 3DS as well, and I'll give you my top 10 list on that system. The DS is something important to me because back then I was still young. In 2007, I was around 12 years, 13, almost 14, around that. So I was still a child. I didn't make my own money. I couldn't buy my own games. So I was very reliant on saving up a bunch of money, getting games for Christmas, getting games for my birthday. So I have a pretty eclectic mix right here. I wasn't as set in my current understanding of video game genres and what I liked. RPGs, I liked, you will see in the list, adventure games, stuff like that. But I wasn't quite as set into my ways as I am today. So we have a few genres here that you may not see on other consoles because I tried them out, I played them, and I enjoyed them as a child. Now, let's jump right into the top 10 list and into the last DS game I got while I was still actively playing the game, the Nintendo DS, and that is Dragon Quest IX. This was my first Dragon Quest. This was the second Dragon Quest ever released in Europe. The first one was Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2. And that one blew my mind when it came out because it looked like Dragon Ball. And I didn't have a PS2, so I couldn't play it. So when this came out in, I think 2009, it was pretty late, so I was still a bit older. I wasn't as much into Dragon Ball anymore. But I was excited, and honestly, when I got it with the big strategy guide I have somewhere over here. I didn't quite get it. I didn't like it as much. It's more of a multiplayer-oriented game. It's more like a Monster Hunter thing. You go into dungeons together, collect loot. But it has a storyline. And a few years ago, I finally played through the entire story. And while I enjoyed it, it's quite nice. It doesn't have quite as much depth and the nuances and overall the quality of a lot of other single-player focused Dragon Quest games. So this one, sadly, not the best Dragon Quest ever made, and I never played it in multiplayer. Maybe that could have saved it a little bit for me. But still a quality game. If you have a DS, you want an RPG, you really can't go wrong with Dragon Quest IX. The next one. This is a series that had quite a bit of struggle in the recent decade, but back then it was on the top of its game, Harvest Moon DS. Now, my main Harvest Moon games as a child were Friends of Mineral Town on the Game Boy Advance and A Wonderful Life on the GameCube. Now, this combines both of them. Harvest Moon DS uses the graphics of the Game Boy Advance game and uses the city, the characters, the environments of A Wonderful Life and creates a new game mixing them together. And this is one of the most feature-rich and just filled with variety Harvest Moon or nowadays Story of Seasons games that you can find. Now, what bumps this down quite a bit is first of all the downgrades in the European version. They took out the gambling, so all the gambling was replaced by something, like some memory game or something. So all the gambling was taken out. And the most hurtful thing here is they took out the Game Boy Advance connectivity. In the US version, Japanese version, you could put here Friends of Mineral Town into the Game Boy Advance slot and Harvest Moon DS into the DS slot, and it would do some record mixing and unlock, first of all, the marriage candidates from the Game Boy Advance game. You can actually marry them in the DS version, and it unlocks a bunch of other features. Never got it in Europe, so I had to, at one point I got an M3 cartridge, which was the predecessor to the R4 cartridges, like a flash card, and I started, pirating my DS games because I had no money and I was fascinated by that. And I played the US version then, and record mixing, it was fine, it was fun, and this always hurt a little bit for the DS version, the European one. So that's why it's bumped down quite a bit, my experience with this. Also, it's very buggy, very glitchy. It's one of the most notoriously buggy games in the series. And there's a website out there that just has a big list of Harvest Moon DS bugs and glitches. So sadly not the most polished game, but still one of my favorites on the DS. During the DS era, I fell out of love with Pokemon. I was a big Game Boy Advance Pokemon guy. The Green and Red remakes, Ruby Sapphire, I was big into them. And during the DS era, I don't know, it lost its appeal and it didn't feel like the upgrade that I wanted from a Pokemon game. However, what I did get were some of the spin-offs, and one of my favorites has always been Pokemon Mystery Dungeons, Team Blue. This is a roguelike Mystery Dungeons game, like Shiren the Wanderer. You know what Mystery Dungeons is, Toniko's Adventure on the PS1. I think it started on the Super Nintendo as like Toniko, as a Dragon Quest spin-off, these games. And it's a roguelike game and has so much depth, so many dungeons. When you died, you had to start all over again. When you finish the story, you finally could evolve your Pokemon. You couldn't evolve your Pokemon before that. And it was one of my first big experiences with the game is not over. There's a post-game to explore here. And the post-game is easily bigger than the main story of this game. The main story is more like a tutorial of it all. I never finished the big dungeons getting Mew and Mewtwo, but still, this is my first experience with a proper roguelike or roguelite game, as you would maybe call it, dungeon crawler, and I enjoyed every minute of it. There's a Switch remake here. The red version is on the Game Boy Advance, and there was also some record mixing where you can mix the two together. I have the Game Boy Advance version here somewhere. I should play that at one point on my TV on the Game Boy player. Cheers to you drinking the white tea I bought for the first time. Maybe I'll talk about it in a future video. There's another big RPG that mixed everything I loved, and that was Custom Robo Arena. This is the first Custom Robo game we got over here. We never got the Nintendo 64, I think that was Japanese only. And the GameCube version never came out in Europe, I think. And whereas the previous games were more of, arena fighters and a bit of adventure in there, this is a fully blown RPG where you build your own robot and you fight other people. And I have just so many memories with this, like doing the fights that were pretty hard, unlocking the black market by, I think, giving a password in the store. It opened a secret pair of stairs. and you could get into the black market by illegal robot parts. Like things like that just blew my mind back then. I haven't played it since I was a child. I want to go back to this and give it a try. But Custom Robo Arena is one I have very big memories with. Most of these games, by the way, I haven't played since I was very young. And, you know, it's just nostalgia for the most point. And I'm a bit afraid to check them out again in the future and maybe ruin my experiences with it. But I think Custom Robo should hold up just fine. I talked to people about it in the last year or so, and they said it holds up. The next one is a sequel to my favorite video game series of all time. And sadly, after the Game Advance games, the DS one was a bit of a letdown, but it's still a very solid game, and that is Lunar Nights. Known as Boktai DS or Boktai Django and Sabata in Japan. This is the fourth game in the Boktai series. The first one is more of a self-contained trilogy, and this is, let's call it a spin-off of the third game. It goes more into a sci-fi space theme, whereas the first three games were more of a like fantasy western themed. It's tangentially related to the Game Advance games. They just rebooted it for the West. The Game Advance games were not that popular. We got 1 and 2, 3 was Japan exclusive, and then they made the fourth called Lunar Nights instead of Boktai DS, changed the characters' names. Otenko here was renamed Toasty. I don't know who they were trying to appeal to with that one. And we had Aaron and Lucien, I think, over here, instead of Django and Sabata. Still a great action-adventure if you can get over that this is not a proper Boktai sequel. There's a lot of fun, has a lot of throwbacks to the series as well. And I thought like Boktai was over, and then I saw this in a store and I had to try it out. And it's a good game. I would recommend playing it after you've played the Boktai games. But it's a bit more accessible. You know, it's not the UV sensor was stripped out. You no longer need to play in the sunlight, which takes out a lot of the fun I had with the Game Advance game, I have to be honest. Now, this was the game that convinced me to get the DS after my friend explained it to me. I was a big fan of Harvest Moon, as I told you, and this seems like the next step that I wanted to take. Animal Crossing. Wild World. And Animal Crossing is a series where you only have one first experience, and the first Animal Crossing game you play is probably your Animal Crossing game. And you're always hunting for that experience again, and you can never have it. This, I think, is like the quintessential Animal Crossing game. The N64 and GameCube ones, you still have the stupid hat with the horns, you know, some things that I didn't enjoy as much. But a lot of these were fixed in Wild World. Sadly, nowadays, it's more of a stripped-down game. The frame rate is terrible. The graphics are not the prettiest. But it has all the features I want. It was one of the first games I played online quite a bit. I met many friends playing Animal Crossing online. And it has even the little hotspot thing over here that indicates it's wireless compatible. So I had so much fun making new friends, playing with friends, exploring their cities. And I played this every day. It was one of my first experiences with a real-time clock, which is something that just blew my mind, and I don't think people nowadays understand that anymore. Before that, games were self-contained. Now these games, they ran in the background. When you were not playing, they were playing themselves. So if you didn't visit it for 5 weeks, the characters in the game would know that you hadn't been there for 5 weeks. And just getting back to it every day, doing things, doing the tasks all over, growing fruit and plants, this real-time thing blew me away. And I think this and the following game that were the first games I played with that feature after maybe Pokemon Channel on the GameCube. So Animal Crossing, this is my big experience with Animal Crossing. Now this one, I was so excited to play, and I loved this so much. Nintendogs. Yes, I know, it's a bit of a cliche that Nintendogs was your first game on the DS, but I loved this game so much. It blew my mind, as I told you, the real-time clock, working together with your dog, doing the tournaments, brushing it, cleaning it, feeding it, And it would get hungry if you don't feed it every day. And it would get dirty if you don't clean it every day. And talking to it, the microphone in the DS, all of these features were so brand new and so exciting for me back in the day. And I could play games on the PC that used the microphone, but that it all was self-contained in this little package blew my mind, and Nintendo just embodies this for me. And you may think it's just Nintendo's, whatever. I played the 3DS version a few months ago and just felt like I need some Tamagotchi style thing. I had the time of my life with it. And the 3DS version is a graphical upgrade, but gameplay wise a bit of a downgrade from the original. So check out the original Nintendo's, have a great experience with that. Now we are getting into the top 3 games. Now the top 3 are always what people are really excited for, because these are the big recommendations that even if you don't like the system, whatever, these are the games you should check out. And I think these are really the cream of the 3DS and the best game that I've experienced on the system. Now, mind you, I have not played every DS game. So if your favorite game is not on the list, please tell me down in the comments and I will try to check it out in the future. Like a lot of the Dragon Quest remakes, for example, there are quite a bit RPGs that I didn't play on the DS. Maybe some got ported to the 3DS and finally brought over in Europe, which is another story. We didn't get a lot of games that came out back then, and we had to make do with what we got in Europe. There were still a lot of games that simply didn't make their way over here. So let's get into the top 3. Cheers to you. This is quite a rare game. I got this for 10 euros in a bargain bin and I don't regret it. I think the US version is super expensive. That's Solato Robo, Red the Hunter. The sequel to Tail Concerto on the Game Boy Advance. As I told you, I got this for 10 euros in a bargain bin. Thought, looks cool. I like little furry characters. And I said, one day I want to play it, but I want to play Tail Concerto first. I knew about Tail Concerto back then. And then, maybe 5 years ago, I finally sat down and played Tail Concerto on the PS1, which was fine. It's a cool little game. And then I got into this one, and it was a fine game. It's graphically very cool, very interesting, and the story was interesting. And when the game came to an end, I thought, it's a nice little game. It's a nice follow-up to Tail Concerto. And then there's a gigantic twist at the end of the game. And then the second half starts. You're only halfway through. And that's where I got hooked. Like, this is amazing. There's a gigantic twist that you didn't expect, that you didn't see coming. And it just changes your whole perspective on the game and the story. And it takes a turn for a lot more of a serious and dark story that you didn't expect from this colorful little furry game. And that's why Solato Robo, Red the Hunter is top 3 on my list. Check this out. If you make your way through the first half, you will not be disappointed with the second one. I highly recommend checking this one out. Why it's not higher up on the list, you cannot skip cutscenes. And I would like to go through it again, but I don't. It's a game, I wouldn't mind. It's a short little game. I think, 20 hours or something. And I think you could play it over and over and have a bit of fun exploring the world a bit more. But the cutscenes are long, frequent, and you cannot skip them. So not being able to skip cutscenes in RPG is one of my big pet peeves. I don't want to read this every time I want to play through the game. This one I had on my R4 cartridge back then, based on a recommendation I heard online. I thought, let's give it a try. And I played it for dozens of hours. And I played the final levels. I think I never finished the final level of Elite Beat Agents, where you play the divas in the final level. I never could manage that. But Elite Beat Agents, I got this copy later on. A lot of the games I downloaded back then, I got a physical copy for later on, paying the publishers, the developers for the fun experiences I had. And Elite Beat Agents is a music rhythm game. The Ozu games, the ball goes around, you have to follow it with your stylus. This game, it's so cool. The idea of you have these agents trying to cheer on people in their daily lives, and it's just so fun. The stories are memorable, the Christmas one with the dad. Oh man, so many memories here. It's just so crazy, so fun. There are two Japanese games that this is based on, like Okendan, something like this, where you're actually like a male team of cheerleaders. Then they adapted it for the West, making it these like FBI agents running around, singing, dancing, cheering people on. So Elite Beat Agents. I love this game. One big disadvantage is the music quality is very, very low. So I would like a proper remake of this one with higher music quality so I can really enjoy the cover songs that we have here of popular hits from the past. Now, number one, and this is more relevant now than it was a few weeks ago because there was a remake announced of this for the Nintendo Switch, and that is Another Code. Two Memories, or a Trace Memory, I think in the US it got renamed. I love this game. It's an adventure game, Myst style, but you know, it's more of a teenager focused thing. It's something kids can enjoy. And some of the puzzles, they're not too hard, but the whole atmosphere of being on this island, solving the mystery, finding this like ghost boy and trying to solve his backstory. I think Ashley here was one of my first big crushes when I was 13, 14 back then. I loved her a lot, her personality, she's quite cute, and her white hair. I love Another Code. And you can beat this in 4 hours. It's not a big game. So a 4-hour game, if you know what you're doing, even if you don't know what you're doing, maybe 5 or 6. And I'm so sad Sing is gone, the developer of this game. They also made the Hotel Dusk games, which a friend of mine was really into, and I didn't get into it too much back then, but I want to check them out in the future, Hotel Dusk. They always look quite interesting as well, but Another Code is what it was at for me. And it got a sequel, Another Code R for the Wii, which was more of a longer visual novel style of game, less like gameplay focused than this. And now both games are getting a remake for the Nintendo Switch. I'm super excited for that. If you can get your hands on this, I'm sure the Switch remake will be fantastic. But on the DS, Another Code. My favorite game on the DS. I have the most nostalgia, fun memories of this. It was such a memorable experience, and I wish I could go back. You can do multiple playthroughs, get the chocolate in the second playthrough. Little things like that fascinated me, that I could go through the game again, experience the story again, and unlock little secrets here or there. I loved that a lot. So that's my top 10 list of Nintendo DS games. As I said, if you have another game in the list, please leave it down in the comments. What's your favorite DS game? And stay tuned for the 3DS video coming right up, probably in the following days or so. See you in the next video. Bye.